I'd like to thank everybody for coming out for the Community Development Committee meeting on this Tuesday, May 3rd. In the room with me, besides staff, is Councilman Wesley Hudson and Councilman Cyril Jefferson. The first item on the agenda is a fair housing discussion, and I'll turn it over to staff. Duran Hollis.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Duran Hollis, the Managing Director for Communications and Public Engagement. I want to share just a brief update about the Fair Housing Program and the Fair Housing Ordinance, and we'll get that up on the screen. There we go, like magic. Well, just some important background for the fair housing update that we want to give. It's actually a conversation that began years ago. We primarily will be discussing our most recent history stemming from January of last year when an HRC work plan item resulted in a recommendation from the HRC that we consider looking at a fair housing program from High Point that resulted in the City Council assigning the Human Relations Commission to explore the feasibility of a fair housing program. And essentially what that does is provides local access to fair housing support to our residents. Currently, we refer all fair housing issues for High Point to be handled and investigated out of Raleigh. So just some background there. As far as the timeline, November '07, based on the city's analysis of impediments through community development, High Point City Council adopted a local fair housing ordinance. Well, that ordinance in October 2009 was declined by HUD, and so the term substantial equivalence, or essentially having an ordinance that lines up with HUD federal guidelines, was rejected. Now, the part of that is important because what we have to keep in mind here with this ordinance is that the city is creating an ordinance that falls in line with HUD guidelines. Maybe different than some other ordinances that we create. There's a special area that this ordinance falls in where HUD has to agree that it fits their standards according to fair housing law. So one of the reasons that it was rejected, there were many areas of opportunity with it, but one of the reasons, for example, was that it didn't adequately articulate the designation of appointed board members versus city staff as they worked in operating the execution of related individual cases. So we tried to learn from that history, and for this effort, we did a couple of things. We got as many subject matter experts at the table as possible. We've got from staff, now we have Jelani Biggs on our team, who was a former fair housing investigator in Winston. We added to our team Race McCrae, who's a master researcher. We've also spent a lot of time with our legal department and got the assistance of outside counsel where necessary. We worked directly with HUD to make sure that we were establishing guidelines and going in a direction that was something that they could agree with, and the community stakeholders. We got dozens of people from the community and a couple of dozen different organizations involved in the conversation and dialogue and educational process. And last but not least, we talked to the state Human Relations Office to make sure that they understood what we were doing and we understood what they were doing and how our processes currently overlapped in the areas of opportunity that they saw in a fair housing program for the city. So fast forward from that 2009 juncture, and in 2016, as a result of some discussions and dialogue that had happened, the City Council amended the Fair Housing Ordinance to reflect the actual practice of the Human Relations Division. It had been a department, it was changed to a division, and at that point, the Human Relations function was not substantially equivalent, did not investigate cases, did not have the authority to go into those cases. So the role morphed more into a support role, somewhat what it is now when it comes to fair housing cases, with those things being referred to the State Human Relations Office in Raleigh. So, as we mentioned earlier, in January of 21, the FAP discussion started with our housing security workshops as a result of the Human Relations Commission's suggestion that we look into becoming a fair housing program in High Point. There was May a report given to City Council. In July, we actually kicked off those workshops. We mentioned with public feedback on that feasibility. And then in August, the Human Relations Commission voted unanimously to recommend that High Point seek FAP designation. So when we talk about a fair housing assistance program, it does a couple of things. Primarily, it provides local access to highly trained fair housing experts. You have the housing education, outreach, and partnerships. The complaint process is all in-house from the city staff standpoint, so that now if someone comes in and they've got a fair housing issue, the current process requires them to have additional layers of information from the standpoint of they have to get information to Raleigh. They have to, in some cases, they have to wait for investigators from Raleigh to come here locally in order to do the things that would normally be for many other services would be available here for our residents. So having that local fair housing program gives the flexibility and the speed and the convenience of having that service available to our residents. And it is designed for High Point residents and housing professionals, which means that the people that are working with the fair housing issues are people in the community that we already know. So it's not someone coming from out of town to talk to a housing provider. It's happening at the level with staff that people in the community see every day. So to talk about the criteria for substantial equivalency, we've got some information here. I mentioned a lot of the work that you see that we put in came from some very late evenings from our Community Relations Division, Human Relations Division Manager, Race McCrae, and I mentioned Jelani Biggs' experience. But to boil it down, for substantial equivalency, what we're talking about, the ordinance that the city creates has to provide the same protections, rights, and remedies as the Fair Housing Act. And so that gets into, and we've got legal here to go into some more specific steps, but just in a nutshell, same civil enforcement action, judicial power to award damages, and grant relief as appropriate. It's important to remember there that this mechanism is available today at the state level. So for our housing providers, if in the rare case where we did have something that was escalated, wasn't able to be conciliated, wasn't able to be resolved at the staff level, then this remedy exists now, but it's just at the state level. We would just be taking something that already exists and making it available for our disposal at the local level. So we're not creating any new laws that the landlords are being subject to. It's just having those laws in a place where we can handle them at a local level. I think that's something important to remember. Now, the agency must be empowered with decision-making authority. That's the second part of it. So the agency would have to receive, accept, and process, dismiss complaints, to do the necessary investigation of those allegations of complaints, to conciliate those complaints, which you find the majority of them are conciliated before they come to any particular action, and to decide whether the matter will or won't be pursued, and that would be an aspect of what you get in the legal department. We mentioned some of the partnerships and some of the things that it took to put this together. Again, we mentioned the work that we've done with the City Attorney's Office. We also worked heavily with the Housing and Urban Development Office of Fair Housing, the State Human Relations Commission, And we mentioned a lot of the agencies. We were really pleased by the amount of feedback and information and questions that we got from community agencies. High Point Regional Association of Realtors, Guilford County Family Justice Center, the community builders. Those were some of the groups that wanted to know how they could get involved, how they could help support this after they got the information that we provided in those housing security workshops. But there were a number of other agencies that attended the meetings, got information, and gave us some really good feedback, which, again, we wanted to make sure we had some community input before we move forward with the process that would affect many of those groups in the same community. So as far as a recommendation, the Human Relations Commission recommendation, as you see there, if the council decides to move forward with a Fair Housing Assistance Program, three things that would be recommended. One would be to adopt the resolution and accept the recommendation, and that would direct city staff to take the required steps for certification. Two would be to adopt a fair housing ordinance that is substantially equivalent, as I stated earlier, to those federal fair housing laws. We have that should be included as an attachment, that ordinance. And then finally, creating a human relations specialist position, which this would be a designated investigator, much like what Jelani did in Winston. And that would offer not only that investigation piece, but also fair housing trainings to residents and to housing professionals, and to be able to process those fair housing complaints. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Megan with our legal department and let her talk through some of the points about some of the specifics as far as how the process would work.
Yeah, I think Jerron did a great job of kind of summarizing the process. When we got involved to work together with the Human Relations Division, I think our goal was to draft an ordinance that traced the federal fair housing law as closely as possible, because that ensures what he kind of keeps mentioning. It's a term of art, substantial equivalency. And then that, will be a fast track to getting approval from HUD this time. And the second part of the goal was also to make sure that we addressed what they had already identified in the failed 2007 draft, to kind of set us up for success moving forward. The process where legal really will come into, like he said, we're kind of a tag team. So the Human Relations Division will accept the complaint and do all of the investigation for it. And they'll have the ability to potentially come up, to mediate the efforts between the complainant and the violator, to do the full investigation, to consider conciliation, and that will all reside within Jerron's Human Relations Division world. And then if they determine that there's no reasonable cause to move forward, then there'll just be a notice of dismissal. If they determine that there is a reasonable cause to move forward, then that's when legal really comes into play. They'll consult with us, we'll talk about the case. If we agree that a reasonable cause does exist, then we'll file an action in Superior Court, is where it would go next. At any time, there can be a conciliation, as they've mentioned, which is basically just a mutually agreeable resolution for both parties without actually going to the court system. But if it's necessary for us to move forward, then we will. And that's the process is pretty straightforward. As Jerron mentioned as well, we've done a lot of kind of market research with the other jurisdictions around and talked to folks. That was part of the research process, and it does seem that the majority of these complaints are handled at the conciliation process, that it's rare for them to have to go to Superior Court, but if it is, then we'll be ready for it to help in and move forward with an action. Really, so then next steps is just what the recommendations are, is we have a draft that we feel very good about, that we've vetted, and hopefully we'll be able to get this substantial equivalent pretty easily. And once you adopt that, then we can move forward with kind of implementing the logistics of standing up the department for that. Do you guys have any questions about the ordinance or the process side for it?
Any questions? Well, I'll let you finish, because
That's what I was going to ask, if you had any questions of
okay.
us. We got staff here, legal. And I think Megan has something else to say.
Just as a reminder, because I left everything in my other office, what was the percentage of cases that moved forward to court? Y'all remember what, like, I think you looked up, you gave us like some examples of from different cities, like how many of those cases actually moved forward?
I'll ask Yolanda to speak to that.
Okay.
Sure. Jelani Biggs, DEI officer. What you'll see with national trends year to year, cause findings account for about 3 to 5% of those cases. Now, keep in mind, even with cause cases at the administrative level, legal will again have another bite of the apple to conciliate that case. So I would assume there's even a smaller percentage that go to the litigation phase.
Mm-hmm. And because I was like curious to what the human relations specialist position, what that would look like, and if we were to move forward with, is this something that we'll be discussing in this up and coming budget? Will it need to be something that possibly, depending on the time it takes to go through this process, will this be something that we need to amend to bring into place?
Well, I think we're at a place where we, if we had direction from the committee and the council to move forward, that we could include this in the proposed budget to be adopted. I think when we met last time we had this conversation, I think we estimated the position and cost of the position to be $60,000 to $70,000 annually. That's salary and benefits. There are program costs and other costs that I know we would have some federal funding that would cover part of that. There's a formula, but it's not real set, so it could be a fluctuating amount. But there are some federal funds that we would receive to support the program.
All right. Thank you, Eric, and thank you. So is this is something we're to take to a vote now as a recommendation to move forward?
Well, I think the recommendation as far as next steps, I believe the manager wanted us to have this discussed in community development so we could end up with a recommendation to move forward for council. So that was the idea here.
All right.
Let's double check.
Well, with that being said, the environment being what it is, the increased cost of living is pretty much an owner's market, whether you're renting or selling and so forth. I can see this definitely being necessary. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the item of 2022.
Second?
210.
If you want to make it, I'll second it. I'll make it if you want to second.
I'll make the motion.
So move, second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. That moves forward with a positive recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great work, y'all. Thank you so much. The next up would be,
Just because I know it's going to probably come up when we get to the regular meeting. Some of these things that will be adopted. I mean, it's off the screen now. Give me a second. I'll pull up.
and for those listening, this is Councilman Jefferson taking the floor.
Some of the things that we'll be adopting. I mean, I imagine directing city staff to undertake required steps. That seems pretty straightforward. Creating a position, that seems pretty straightforward. I guess at some point we'll revisit what the actual ordinance looks like. I know we've talked about it, but we've not seen the language around this ordinance. At some point, like at this point, we're not adopting an ordinance. At this point, we're working towards a process of seeing an ordinance at some point, right?
I believe, Madam Clerk, that it's included in the package, the final draft that Jerron's team and the legal team has put together. Isn't that right?
So there's an actual ordinance with language in that packet?
I think we shared it.
There's one available.
Yeah, it's available, yeah.
Was it emailed to them last night? Because that's when I got it. Another thing too is that we were just kind of noting one another. I don't think it'll be an amendment because I think the old ordinance was completely rescinded. So it would just be
New ordinance.
Just adopting a brand new ordinance?
Yeah.
But we have a draft ready for you to review. That we both vetted.
Yeah, the final version that's been vetted by legal and with the help of staff is available. If it was not in your packet, we'll get those to you. But that document will be what will be considered with this motion, because that's the linchpin there. Of that ordinance is what starts the process of the substantial equivalent designation.
Is this on the drive, on the OneDrive?
No, I'm sorry, I got it last night during our meeting, and I have not had time to upload it
Okay, no, that's totally
today.
Can full council probably get it, I guess, and just be notified about it? Because I know what's gonna come up in the regular meeting is, well, what's the language? And there'll be a lot of conversation around language. So if we could give everyone plenty of time to see the language of the ordinance, but also the resolution. So, I mean, the gist of this, we've been following, our committee's been following this for 2 years. The regular council has not followed this for 2 years. So if everyone can get that language just to review ahead of that meeting, I think that'd be great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, it is, we are looking into a report from the Continuum of Care. Okay. I'll turn the floor over to staff once again.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I just wanted to come up and actually introduce Sherry Neal. She is the COC Program Coordinator with Guilford County. And you may recall it's been a little over a year ago that Guilford County became the lead entity or the collaborative applicant for the Guilford County COC. And at that time, Sherry was brought on board. And this is actually her first in-person meeting. She has been joining us virtually. So I did just want to take an opportunity to introduce her to you all, and she will be providing the update for today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, Chairman and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to meet everyone face-to-face. Work with a lot of the city of High Point, but we are always on virtual. So my name is Sherry Neal, and I am the Continual Care Program Manager for Guilford County. I report directly to Victor Isler, who is our newest Assistant County Manager. We are working as a team. We're in the process, and now we just released 3 positions that will help support as the collaborative applicant for the county, as well as working closely in collaboration with the city of High Point, as well as city of Greensboro. So we're looking forward to that growth to help and support in around issues around our homelessness and housing, working closely with our business partners to enhance and educate their knowledge and do whatever we can to rectify some of the issues that we have in the community around our homeless population, and to really look at solutions to address some of these issues that we've had ongoing for some time now. And then, of course, work in partnership with both municipalities around how we can expand capacity, because that seems to be a major issue right now. So there has been an interlocal government committee that has been formed. And right now, Greg Fisher, who's the Assistant City Manager here, is a part of that, and of course, Ms. Wilson. And then, of course, Victor is, as well as for the Assistant City Manager in City of Greensboro and his community development team as well. And so we're really working together collaboratively to try to work on addressing the issues and be able to report back to you all as elected officials about what's kind of going on in the community and where do we see some of the gaps. We have had an opportunity to work very closely with our TA HUD, and so they're offering technical assistance to our entire community. And doing that, we actually have a gaps analysis that's going on now, and so we'll have listening sessions, and there is one for elected officials and municipalities. I think it's scheduled in 2 weeks, and so I'll be sending that information out to Ms. Wilson to forward it to the parties that would like to participate, to offer that feedback so that we can have a more collaborative approach and response to the issues around here in our community.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for?
Okay,
I'm gonna
nice
always
meeting
have-
you.
I almost
Oh,
gonna
yes,
have
sir.
one or two. When we had the, I guess the moratorium ended on evictions, can you speak to that and in any of the I guess, applicable funding that went forward to try to help, I guess, alleviate some of that?
So with the eviction moratorium, of course, that ended in August, really, we had the ERAP dollars, and of course, that as of March 31st, we're no longer taking any new applications. However, there are some caveats that we're working through in regards to if people get in some type of crisis. So we have to work on that on a case-to-case basis. Individuals that had already applied before that March 31st will still be at some level of consideration. But of course, anyone after that point, we can't make promises. There has been a lot of, we're also working in conjunction where we have funded the eviction mediation program that is through the University of Greensboro, through the Center for Housing, and so we've been working very closely with them. We're also hoping to expand because, we've had the eviction clinic here in the city of Greensboro, but of course, we already know that it hasn't been equitable, so we need to make sure, because it's not fair that residents from City of High Point will have to come to City of Greensboro to either be serviced or receive the same level of help. So we're currently trying to work on that process. We do work closely with the administration staff here at the courthouse around making sure that we get the dockets. We're looking at those individuals that are on the dockets. We're also making sure that we're cross-referencing if those that need legal aid, they are stepping in as they can, but we really need an eviction clinic in the city of High Point to make it equitable for everyone. So we're really working forward to that, and I'm hoping in the coming months that we can have that resolved so that it's equal for all residents here. And then there have been lots of discussions about some other opportunities that we could partner with the county and the city of High Point could partner around some development opportunities, and we're in current discussions about that, to work around affordable housing. Of course, we all know that that's a major issue, and so how do we move forward in our community to talk about more affordable housing? So, and there are also some workarounds around how we can address our shelters that are at capacity but don't have all the resources, especially when we start talking about our family shelters that, they are out of capacity and not being able to address children and family needs, mental health issues, and so forth. So we are really trying to make sure that on the boots, on the ground, making sure being very a part and being a part of the community and being very intentional as we navigate, and knowing that we have all the partners at the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Neal. I think that the reason I wanted that out there is because I'm just trying to make people as aware as many resources as possible, because it's really dire on a lot of levels. I've talked to a lot of property owners, and they talk about their waiting list, easily stretching into a year and some change, and they haven't put an end to receiving the applications. So, yeah, just any information we can share about available resources, I want to make sure we get out. And thank y'all, because your work is now even more important than it has been.
Right, and just so you'll know, even in the point of time count, Ms. Wilson and, gosh, I can't think of his name, Race. I was like, Race.
You got
it? Sorry about that. Worked very closely with them. We really built out a whole team to address our point-in-time count, to address our homeless count that had to happen on February the 23rd. And so we were able to bring the police department in. We had 3 teams here on the ground, along with the faith-based team, which hadn't happened in the past. So we're working very closely with the universities to ensure that we can get some of these needs addressed. So. Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. The last item here, I'm trying to reserve whether I'm going to be happy about this or not. I'm going to let the staff go ahead and finish their report, but it looks like something I should be happy about. I'll turn the floor over to Lori. This is on the ordinance to rescind demolition orders, which is the first time I've ever seen a possible consent agenda in development.
Yeah, I don't know if it's to be excited about or not,
Okay.
but good afternoon. These are houses that we had brought before City Council to try and encourage owners along the way to either repair it or demolish it, because they weren't doing it for us. And y'all have a little more fear in y'all when they have to stand up here. But these owners chose to demolish it. So in the interim, from the time the ordinance passed for their appeal periods up, they just went ahead and demolished it, or they told us they were going to demolish, and we worked with them on the time frame. So we're just doing some cleaning up of paperwork and rescinding the ordinances so that it's not sitting out there on their property.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you don't mind me asking, this is Councilman Jefferson. If you don't mind me asking, just if you know the information, on average, how long would you say, on average, some of these properties sat before they were demolished? So from the moment that you would have approved demolition to the moment in which they probably went down. I know it was working with them, you said, on timing.
The majority
Was
probably
it a pretty
were,
reasonable time, when you say?
yes, after you passed the ordinance for demolition. Most of them, I didn't go through and look at exact dates, but just kind of from memory, I think majority were down within like 45, 60 days after you passed, because it's 30 before we'll even go back out to see if it's still standing and what they've done. So in some, we went back on day 30 and found out it was gone. So, and they don't call us then either and tell us they've done that. So, but majority do it pretty quickly. Some will say they're having to wait on money or having to wait on whatever, brothers to pitch in or sisters to pitch in with money.
Yeah. And this may be in some ways outside the scope of this conversation, but I'm just curious, to like the spirit of what we're looking to do here. Any of them mentioned potentially wanting to rebuild on those lots? I mean, I know that's not required for them to talk with y'all about that, but anyone say, yeah, we demolished and we're looking to rebuild here?
I just, maybe not these specific properties, but I know there were a couple that they were, that was their intentions. They'd said that they planned to demolish, and we ended up demolishing, and they were wanting to rebuild there. Whether or not they actually did and pulled permits, I'm not sure, but some will express that interest.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that information. I think for me, just so everyone knows what I'm thinking, ultimately, certainly our goal of blight reduction, we do that through demolition, but I know that we all feel a lot more positive whenever someone's able to actually renovate and redo a house as opposed to it going down. But once one does go down, you almost wonder if it's not also a positive step for that lot to have something done with it positively, and just wonder if that's ever a part of any conversations. Because I know I've gotten phone calls and emails from people who say, well, sure, we're glad the blight is gone, but now it's just a patch of grass.
Right.
And people who say, what's the next step there? So, not that I want to give any extra homework to anyone, but just, I am curious about that. And heck, perhaps that's just a conversation we sit on for a little bit, but I know I've gotten at least a few of them. It hasn't been overwhelming or anything like that, but I've gotten a few of them when people are concerned about having empty lots.
Right, that's a downfall.
Well, and that's common when you go into blight reduction. That's something that we talk with the Center for Community Progress when we got the technical assistance. I think some of the stuff they did in Detroit, they actually had, I think, $1 sale on lots next door to standing existing owner occupant. We ain't doing that. I'm just giving examples of some of the stuff that was done to try to help with that. But still, when you consider public safety measures and you don't want houses burnt down because of squatters in there, and so forth and set forth, it's still better, and it's better that it's a flat lot. But I'll be honest with you. When I saw the word repair in the description, I was waiting to see some pretty pictures. But that's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're moving forward with it. So.
And I think, Lori, for the record, if you read the list of properties in so that we know which ones we're talking about.
Okay. So, and there was on your packet that was provided, it had a separate sheet that broke down the address and actually when the ordinance was passed and then when we closed our case. So the properties that we're asking to rescind the ordinances for demolition on are 1834 Willard, 908 Richardson, 1615 Long, 1220 Lakeview Heights, 262 Dorothy Street, 523 North Centennial Street, 605 Langford Avenue, 1310 Reagan Avenue, 1336 Cox Avenue, 317 4th Street, 811 Willow Place, 308 4th Street, 1441 Madison Street, and 412 Walnut Street. And these are all ones that the owners demolished the properties, so we did not.
All right, with that said, I will make the motion to approve item 2022-212, order to rescind demolition orders. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any other discussion? All right, that motion passes as a
Thank you.
positive recommendation to council. Thank you. That is the last thing I actually have here. Is there any member has any questions or comments?
I'll say, I appreciate the note last night about Operation End As Much. I love that the city engages in it. I love the fact that city staff every year works with our partners, Community Housing Solutions. I'm probably forgetting the other one, but it was so great to go out there. It was right in Ward 1, and to see the folks, you know, we got to the house, at least the house I was at, and to hear the story shared by the resident there who, you know, she's retired, she's owned her home for 28 years due to unfortunate circumstances, you know, and some violence that happened there at her home. Her home was really in kind of a bad shape. And just to see the appreciation on her face of the folks being there. And not only that, but much credit to the volunteers who I think, based on what I perceived, everyone was doing the work like it was their own home. And people were taking real special care to want to do it to the highest quality possible. And it was noticed by the resident and how much care was taken. I think I worked with Billy, who's a project manager with community development. I think his name's Billy. And he literally, the way he led the team, the way he interacted with the resident, I mean, it was awesome. And they spoke about Billy and the team coming out for weeks to kind of work with them and just say, hey, you know, let us know how we can support and how can we help with this, and is this going to interrupt? And it was just it was a fantastic day to hear of all the great interactions that had taken place. I don't know about y'all, I get the calls whenever people don't like something the city's doing, but I've heard the folks really felt not only did they appreciate what was going on, but they felt appreciated and felt that someone was valuing them in that moment. So great job, seriously. Thank y'all.
Did you get y'all have a ripple effect? Like neighbors coming out seeing y'all cleaning up, let me go cut my grass real quick, kind of stuff, or let me go pick up? I promise you, it's very common when they're seeing people in their neighborhoods cleaning up, they don't want to be the one yard that's close to that. And, yeah. So, but yeah, thank you. I think that's the third one I've missed, and it was either from illness or injury, or I just didn't know. So,
All right. You only missed the best one. It's okay.
yeah, see, that figures. But yeah, once again, thank y'all so much for that. That's still one of the main primary, I think, very impactful projects that we do here in the city. So well, I'm looking forward to the next one. Will that be in October?
It will be in October.
It will be in October.
And if I can just say too, we will have a video and the exact numbers, we just don't have that compiled right now.
Right.
We will provide an official update for you.
Perfect. I guess we can do it at the next, or whenever you're ready, our community development. But I think the body needs to see it too, even if it's done like in a manager's briefing. I think that's important. So, well, that's all I have. Is anyone else? Anyone else? No? Okay. I think we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
All right.